I walked in early from my business trip, excited to surprise Amanda with roses and champagne. Instead, I found her car and Mike's blue Audi in our driveway. Strange knots formed in my stomach as I entered our home and heard sounds from upstairs. Standing frozen at our bedroom doorway, I discovered my fiancé and best friend together. Amanda looked at me, shock turning to cruelty. "What are you going to do, cry?" she mocked. I just smiled and walked away. This morning my phone exploded with missed calls from both of them. I never answered. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of real-life storytellers. Now let me take you through one of the most painful yet transformative experiences of my life. I was a 32-year-old software engineer living in Seattle with what I thought was the perfect life ahead of me. My career was thriving at a major tech company. I had just bought a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood, and most importantly, I was engaged to Amanda, the woman I believed was my soulmate. We met 3 years ago at a charity fundraiser for children with cancer. Amanda was volunteering at the registration desk, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her smile lighting up the room as she greeted donors. I was there representing my company, which was one of the main sponsors. When our eyes met, something clicked between us. I worked up the courage to talk to her during the dinner portion, and we ended up chatting until the venue staff started stacking chairs around us. Our relationship progressed smoothly, almost too perfectly. Amanda was smart, ambitious, and worked as a marketing director for a cosmetics company. We shared similar values, enjoyed the same activities, and rarely argued. After 2 years of dating, I proposed during a sunset hike at Mount Rainier. She cried happy tears as she said yes, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. The wedding was planned for June, just 3 months away from that fateful day in March when everything fell apart. We had booked a beautiful vineyard venue, sent out over 200 invitations, and Amanda had already found her dream dress. My parents were flying in from Boston, and her large family was coming from all over the country. Mike had been my best friend since our freshman year of college. We bonded over late-night study sessions and a shared love of basketball. He stood by me through my parents' divorce, my father's heart attack, and every major milestone of my adult life. When I asked him to be my best man, he hugged me with tears in his eyes and said he was honored. I trusted him completely. Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed. Amanda had become increasingly secretive with her phone over the past few months. She would take calls in another room, and I once caught her rapidly switching screens when I walked into our home office. When I asked about it casually, she laughed it off, saying she was planning a surprise for our honeymoon. There were unexplained absences too. Amanda started having more girls' nights and work emergencies that kept her out until late. Her story sometimes had inconsistencies that nagged at me, but I pushed those thoughts away, not wanting to be the jealous, controlling fiancé. Mike had also become strangely distant. Our weekly basketball games were increasingly canceled due to vague excuses. When we did get together, he seemed distracted and uncomfortable meeting my eyes. I assumed he was having trouble with his girlfriend Rachel, but whenever I asked, he changed the subject. The business trip to San Francisco was supposed to last the entire week. I was presenting our new software platform to potential investors meetings scheduled from Monday through Friday. But on Wednesday afternoon, the final 2 days of meetings were unexpectedly canceled when our main investor had a family emergency. I could have stayed and enjoyed some time exploring the city, but instead I felt an impulse to head home early and surprise Amanda. I booked the first flight back to Seattle, stopped by a florist near the airport to pick up 24 roses, and grabbed a bottle of her favorite champagne from the specialty shop near our house. As I drove up our street, my heart felt light with anticipation of her surprised face. Then I saw Mike's distinctive blue Audi parked behind Amanda's white SUV in our driveway. A slight frown crossed my face. Maybe they were planning something for the wedding, but why not tell me they were meeting? I parked on the street, gathered my gifts, and walked to the front door. Using my key, I entered quietly, thinking I might catch them in the act of planning some surprise. The house seemed unusually still, except for muffled sounds coming from upstairs. My feet felt heavier with each step up the staircase. The sounds became clearer as I approached our bedroom. There was no mistaking what I was hearing now, but my mind refused to accept the obvious conclusion until I saw it with my own eyes. The door was partially open. I stood there, flowers and champagne still clutched in my hands as I watched my fiancée and best friend together in our bed. Our bed where Amanda and I had talked about our future children, where we had spent countless Sunday mornings planning our lives together. Time seemed to freeze as they noticed my presence. Amanda gasped, her eyes widening in shock. Mike scrambled to cover himself with our sheets, his face draining of all color. For several seconds, nobody spoke or moved. Jonathan, Amanda finally said my name, sounding foreign on her lips. "You are supposed to be in San Francisco," as if my real transgression was not sticking to my schedule, not giving them the freedom to betray me without consequences. The meetings were canceled. I replied, my voice eerily calm even to my own ears. Mike started stammering. "Bro, this is not what it looks. I mean, it is, but we never meant to. It just happened." I stared at him, this man who had been my best friend for over a decade now, unable to even form a coherent sentence, as he lay naked in my bed with my future wife. Something inside me detached as I realized there was nothing he could say that would make any difference. Amanda's shock quickly transformed into defensive anger. "Well, what did you expect?" she snapped. "Coming home, unannounced like some kind of spy. Were you trying to catch me doing something?" I remained silent, processing the absurdity of her attempting to make me the villain in this scenario. My silence seemed to unnerve her more than any shouting would have. "Say something," she demanded, pulling the sheet up to cover herself. "What are you going to do, Cry?" There was such cruelty in her mocking tone, a side of Amanda I had never seen directed at me before. In that moment, I saw her clearly for perhaps the first time. The woman I loved, who I thought loved me, was capable of not just betraying me, but taking pleasure in my pain. Something unexpected happened inside me. Instead of the rage or breakdown they clearly anticipated, I felt a strange sense of clarity and calm. I looked at them both, smiled slightly, and turned away without another word. I heard Amanda call my name as I walked down the stairs, her voice shifting from mocking to confused. Mike called out too, saying we needed to talk. I closed the front door behind me, got into my car, and drove away, leaving the flowers and champagne on the hallway floor. I checked into a hotel downtown, a nice one I would normally consider too expensive for a casual stay. But in that moment, I needed neutral space that offered comfort. I sat on the edge of the king-size bed and stared at the wall for what felt like hours, my phone buzzing constantly in my pocket. Finally, I turned it off completely. That first night was strange. I expected to feel destroyed, to break down sobbing or rage at the unfairness. Instead, I experienced an emotional numbness that was almost peaceful. My mind worked with unusual clarity, methodically processing what had happened and planning my next steps. By morning, I had mapped out a strategy. I would handle this with dignity and purpose, not give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. I turned my phone on briefly to call my boss and request a week of personal leave, citing a family emergency. Then I turned it off again without checking the dozens of notifications. My first stop was a lawyer's office. I found one who specialized in family law and could see me immediately. I explained my situation without emotional embellishment, focused on the practical matters. Was I legally vulnerable in any way? How should I protect my assets? What about the house I had purchased where Amanda had been living but was only in my name? Next came the systematic dismantling of our shared life. I visited my bank to remove Amanda as an authorized user on my credit cards. I called the wedding venue and explained that the wedding was canceled, accepting the loss of our substantial deposit without complaint. The same went for the caterer, photographer, and band. I contacted my parents and told them simply that the engagement was off due to Amanda's infidelity. I asked them to inform our relatives who had planned to attend the wedding. My mother wanted details, but I kept it brief, promising to explain more when I had processed everything. By the time I turned my phone back on that evening, I had 47 missed calls and 68 text messages. Amanda's ranged from angry accusations to tearful apologies. Mike's were full of pathetic explanations about how their connection had developed innocently and how sorry he was to hurt me. I read them all but responded to none. For the entire next week, I maintained complete silence toward both Amanda and Mike while methodically executing my plan. I knew my silence was more unsettling to them than any confrontation would be. They had prepared for my anger, my hurt, my questions. They had not prepared for my absence. My first call Monday morning was to a locksmith. Since the house was solely in my name, and Amanda had never contributed to the mortgage, I was within my legal rights to change the locks. I scheduled the appointment for when I knew she would be at work. I contacted Amanda's sister Jessica, the only member of her family I still respected. I explained the situation and asked if she would help remove Amanda's belongings from my house. Though shocked, Jessica agreed, saying she had suspected something was wrong with Amanda recently. We arranged for her to come with a moving truck while Amanda was at work. Jessica found evidence that the affair had been going on for at least 6 months, discovering old hotel receipts in Amanda's desk drawer. This was no one-time mistake, as Mike had tried to characterize it in his messages. I asked Jessica to take photos of the receipts, which she sent to me as further documentation. Our shared tablet, which we primarily used for recipes in the kitchen, held more revelations. Amanda had forgotten to log out of her email account, and there I found months of exchanges between her and Mike. Messages planning their meetups, discussions about their feelings, and worse, conversations about me. They mocked my obliviousness, with Amanda complaining about aspects of our relationship she had never mentioned to me. I forwarded these emails to my lawyer, who advised me to compile all evidence of the affair. Not for any legal proceeding, but as protection in case either of them tried to turn our social circle against me with a different version of events. By Thursday, I had drafted a simple factual email that I sent to our closest mutual friends. I did not vilify Amanda or Mike, but simply stated that our engagement had ended because I discovered their ongoing affair. I attached just 2 pieces of evidence, a hotel receipt and 1 email exchange, enough to verify my account without being gratuitously hurtful. I ended by saying I valued their friendship and understood if they needed time to process this information. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Friends called and texted with messages of support. Several admitted they had seen Mike and Amanda talking closely at social gatherings but had dismissed any suspicions. 2 of Mike's friends confessed they had suspected something but had not known how to approach me. Mike's desperate damage control began almost immediately. He called mutual friends with his version of events, claiming it had been a one-time mistake and that Amanda had initiated everything. This backfired spectacularly when one friend, disgusted by his attempt to blame Amanda entirely, forwarded me the conversation. Amanda progressed through a predictable cycle of emotions in her continued messages. Anger gave way to panic as she realized I was systematically removing her from my life. Panic transformed into pleading with long messages about how she had made a terrible mistake and would do anything to fix it. When these went unanswered, she tried to use mutual friends as intermediaries, begging them to get me to talk to her. During this time, I reconnected with friends I had somewhat neglected during my relationship with Amanda, Tony, and David. College friends who had drifted to the periphery of my life stepped up with incredible support. They took me to a basketball game, invited me for dinners, and provided normal social interaction without constant questions about what happened. On Saturday, I ran into Amanda at our local coffee shop. I had been careless, forgetting it was part of her weekend routine. She looked terrible with dark circles under her red eyes. When she saw me, she hurried over, blocking my path. "Jonathan, please," she said, her voice breaking. "Just give me 5 minutes. I know what I did was unforgivable, but we had something real. 2 years of love cannot just disappear. It was a horrible mistake. I was insecure and Mike was there, and it just happened." I looked at her calmly. "Nothing just happens, Amanda. You made choices. Repeatedly. For months. While planning our wedding and looking me in the eye every day. I do not hate you, but I do not know you. The person I thought you were would never have done this. People make mistakes," she insisted, tears streaming down her face. "I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Please just give me a chance." "I have given you all the chances I had," I replied softly. "I wish you well, but this conversation is over." I stepped around her and left my coffee forgotten. That afternoon, I received an unexpected message from Rachel, Mike's girlfriend. She thanked me for revealing the truth, explaining that Mike had been gaslighting her for months about her suspicions. She had broken up with him and wanted me to know she admired how I had handled the situation with dignity. As word spread through our extended social circle, I was surprised by how many people reached out with their own stories of betrayal and recovery. Several admitted they wished they had responded with my level of self-respect rather than allowing themselves to be pulled into ugly, drawn-out dramas. 6 months passed, and I found myself in a completely different place, both literally and figuratively. I had sold the house, unable to feel comfortable in spaces that held so many tainted memories. My new apartment downtown had floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Puget Sound, a fresh start in a place that was entirely mine. The initial emotional numbness had eventually given way to real grief. There were nights I woke up reaching for Amanda, only to remember she was gone by her own choice. There were moments I missed Mike's friendship, the history we shared before, reminding myself of his ultimate betrayal. I started seeing a therapist, something I had never considered before. Doctor. Winters helped me process not just the betrayal, but also the relationship patterns that might have contributed to my blindness to the warning signs. I learned about setting healthy boundaries and recognizing when someone is worthy of the trust I give them. One unexpected bright spot was reconnecting with Sophie, a friend from college I had always enjoyed but lost touch with over the years. We ran into each other at a mutual friend's birthday party, and she mentioned she had heard about what happened. Unlike others who approached the topic with awkward sympathy, Sophie simply said their loss and changed the subject to a book she thought I would enjoy. Sophie and I started meeting regularly for coffee, then dinners, then hikes on the weekends. She was easy to talk to, straightforward in a refreshing way. Our friendship grew organically without pressure or expectations. She had her own past relationship wounds and understood the careful pace at which trust must be rebuilt. 4 months after the discovery of the affair, I ran into Mike at a friend's housewarming party. I had heard he was going through a rough time. His software startup had failed around the same time as many friends had distanced themselves from him. He looked thinner, his usually immaculate appearance now slightly disheveled. He approached me cautiously, eyes downcast. "Can we talk outside for a minute?" he asked quietly. I followed him to the backyard patio, curious rather than angry about what he might say. "I know sorry is not enough," he began, his voice unsteady, "but I am sorry more than I can express. I betrayed not just your trust in me as your future wife's keeper, but 15 years of friendship. I have lost everything that matters, and I deserve it. I do not expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know how deeply I regret what I did." I studied him for a moment. "I forgive you, Mike," I said finally, surprising even myself. "Not for your benefit, but for mine. I do not want to carry anger forever. That said, some broken things cannot be repaired. I wish you well, but our friendship is one of those things." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. Thank you for hearing me out." Through mutual friends, I heard that Amanda had accepted a job offer in Chicago, making a clean break from Seattle, where too many people knew what had happened. She sent me one final email before leaving a more mature reflection than her earlier desperate messages. She took full responsibility for her actions and wished me happiness without asking for anything in return. The day that would have been our wedding arrived in June. Instead of standing at an altar, I spent it hiking Mount Si with Sophie and a few close friends. At the summit, looking out over the valley below, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The betrayal that could have broken me had instead revealed a strength I never knew I possessed. I learned that maintaining dignity in the face of humiliation is a form of power that no one can take from you. Strategic silence can be more impactful than the most eloquent speech or the loudest outburst. Setting boundaries is not just about keeping harmful people out, but about creating space for worthy ones to enter. Most importantly, I discovered that forgiveness is not about excusing inexcusable behavior, but about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. Amanda and Mike's betrayal no longer defines me. It was simply one chapter in my continuing story, a painful but valuable lesson in a life that still holds promise and joy. The relationship Sophie and I built grew from a foundation of honesty and respect, progressing slowly but with genuine connection. We entered it as whole people choosing each other, not seeking completion or escape. Whether it lasts forever is less important than the fact that it has already taught me that trust given to the right person is still possible. The pain I experienced led me to a better version of myself. For that, ironically, I am grateful. Have you ever experienced betrayal that ultimately made you stronger? Share your story in the comments below. If this account of maintaining dignity in the face of betrayal resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more life lessons. Hit that like button if you appreciate the power of handling difficult situations with grace. And share this video with someone who might need to hear that pain can lead to growth. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the best response to cruelty is simply to walk away and build something better.